Then he saw something that gave him a clue to Catania's possible fate. The imprint of a lion's paw. And close beside it, the unmistakable tracks of crocodiles leading to the water. George could not accept what he now knew in his heart to be true. But who thinks of death as humans do? It seemed, as the lions played, they had already forgotten and accepted the loss. The dice are loaded against cubs, and especially little orphans, right from the start. George would miss Catania, and he felt somehow that Christian and Boy would miss her too.
George tunes in by radio transmitter to Nairobi once a week to order supplies. It's his only contact with the outside world, with the rest of Africa, and he usually hears while waiting his turn what's going on. Just after the loss of Catania, he overheard a conversation about 2 young lionesses that had been trapped in the Maralal area. He resolved he must find out about them. Christian stayed at camp, just took it easy, or tried to. At Maralal, the young wild lionesses were causing unusual interest. The villagers and local farmers felt they should be shot, like their cattle-stealing parents. George persuaded the sympathetic African game warden to entrust them to him, even though he knew the rough circumstances of their capture and subsequent treatment by the understandably resentful farmers would make rehabilitation very difficult. The clamor of humans proclaiming their superiority alone could make the lions permanently unapproachable. George, as he traveled back, reflected that the weakness of his plan had been lack of females. The young lionesses were of enormous interest to Christian and Boy, and true to his nature, Christian tried to be friendly with everyone. The lionesses were plainly terrified. George had had to make an immediate, on-the-spot decision to save their lives, without seeing more than a furry mass of fear behind cage bars. Now he saw them properly for the first time. After several hours, with Christian's help, they were persuaded to leave the cages which had held them savage prisoners over the past week. Cages which now, in the face of the unknown, had become their only sanctuary. George called them Juma and Jessica. As he watched their first reactions, he knew they would never accept him. Too much damage had been done. Their rehabilitation must start abruptly. Contact with humans there could never be. Further confinement would only cause resentment. But to release them at once would mean he would possibly never see them again. The best chance seemed through friendship with Christian. A good relationship might act as an anchor. Being more of their age, he was more acceptable than Boy. Through Christian, he would have to try to control them. If he could get Jessica and Juma to eat with, and more important, to sleep with Christian, there was just a chance. Wild lions are very possessive of food. They've had to be to survive. At last, Christian asserted himself. After all, he was a young male lion. His instinct told him it was his right to eat first. Partially successful. Unfortunately, they could not be persuaded to come into the camp with Christian at night for safety. This was to lead to further tragedy. Boy had gone off again, and there was this morning no sign of Jessica. For several nights, the wild lions had been roaring and fighting not far from camp. Last night, they'd been disturbingly close. Vultures circling was a bad omen. It was undoubtedly the work of the wild lions. There was not a mark on her. Jessica's neck had been cleanly broken. To kill a young female like this was unheard of. In the search for freedom, for a natural life with a natural expression, this was the chance she took. And this, sadly, was the price she had to pay. This, too, could be the bitter end that Christian might have to face. George couldn't understand why the vultures were still circling. Again, the wild lions. Boy must have put up a tremendous fight. George had seen him after many tough encounters in the past, but he had never seen him in a state like this. Badly gashed in many places, he was so weak he could not stand. It was not just the work of one wild lion. Christian, seeming to understand the situation, sat quietly by while George gave immediate treatment to Boy's wounds. While George looked after Boy, I arranged for 2 veterinary surgeons to travel up from Nairobi to see what could be done. A large bone splinter from his spine had to be removed, but apart from that, his injuries, although severe, were not as serious as we'd thought. rest, care, and attention were what was needed to get him on his feet again. The hot compresses made from Epsom salts and water that we applied to his wounds must have been extremely painful. Over the past few years, Boy has been scarred many times. Some of his injuries have only been cured by major surgery and a general anesthetic. But somehow this massive lion has managed not only just to survive, but also to keep his close affection for his human friends. We wondered if the tough time Boy was having could possibly sour his outlook on life. Gradually, Boy started to recover. But with the wild, uncontrollable Juma now our only female, we had some hard thinking to do if we wished our pride to survive against the most aggressive wild lions we'd ever encountered. The animal orphanage in Nairobi was originally set up to look after any animals orphaned or abandoned, and then, when possible, to try to rehabilitate them. With cheetahs, it's difficult enough, but lions are almost impossible. That's why there are usually so many in the orphanage. I first saw a baby lion cub. It was a male, brought in only the previous week. He was living next to a baby leopard. He was almost irresistible, but unfortunately we weren't looking for male lions. He had the deepest growl I've ever heard. It was difficult to choose. I'd like to have taken them all, but so many would have made control impossible, and this could have been dangerous, apart from the immense problem of feeding them. Through the wire they seemed friendly enough. It was difficult to realize that never had they been associated with humans. I asked for 2 females, perfectly aware of their strange backgrounds. The request was granted. They took the journey well in the strange, coffin-like crates I had to have made to fit in the short-landing Britain Islander. Terence had been making for the past 6 months a bush landing strip about 8 hours' drive from George's camp. George was delighted. He called them Mona and Lisa. Now, at last, he really did have the basis of a possible pride. 2 males and 3 females. Boy and Christian, Juma, and now Mona and Lisa. We hoped after the disasters of the last few months, the situation would start to improve. Little did we realize the worst was yet to come.